So the question is, how do you do? Who asked that?
Me, sorry. Like, in the same in the vein of commands almost, right? Like, a command is an intent, an event is a thing that happened. And when we're talking about
Oh, right. So the intent is what we want. So the idea is that you can quickly scroll in and see which ones have been done yet and which ones aren't. So my intent is to, a lot of times the commands that we do, and this is why the rapid event modeling leaves out commands, because sometimes it's just like, I want these events to have happened in my future system. That's my intent. Does that make it so, right? Like from Star Trek. Make it so. I want these things to be happening by the end of the year. I want these migrated events to have been in there and all these deployed to Docker events to have been in there. It's my projection of what I would want the truth to be. At this level, it's really about strategy. So we're not in the mechanics of like, well, if I send a command, how, in what ways can it get rejected and how does this event get stored? We really want to do an audit of what would be our, at the end of the year, what do we want to see stored in our system? And that would mark success. If we did these things and people paid and we stored these things, we'd be happy.
Yeah, I think maybe, but the event that I care about as a business is like, I don't know, let's make it up.
Well, we kind of switched business. We switched
no,
to three different businesses now.
It's basically, I'm saying right now, my images are loaded from Docker. And really the success is my images loaded comes from, or sorry, my images loaded for Rocket. And in the future, all images loaded would be from Docker. So when I load a new image, it'd be load Docker image instead of load Rocket image. That's actually business success. Migrating is an implementation detail that's important, but ultimately my strategic move is.
Well, no, I don't know, Rick. I think depending on the business, I would argue that the migration might actually be very expensive. And I want it on there.
I agree that it needs to be on there and how that's part of the process. I need to migrate here. But then if I don't have success, my success is from now on, images are loaded. That success event is
that's fine.
Success. I migrate them, but if I don't use them, it doesn't matter. Right?
I wouldn't be too picky about it. I think it's okay. If you want to do it that way, fine. The idea is you're communicating what you'd like your world to look like. With real examples. So if you want to use commands, fine. I don't care.
Building on both those ideas together, right? There's something different you could think about here. And this is more of a like, let's laugh because this is a bit silly idea, right? But what you have is a set decision criteria. You have a desire, and you have the intent, which is what Jonathan was talking about, the command, right? Then you have the event as the output. Well, you actually have the same pattern of read model, the data you're using to make your decision, the intent you have, and then you have several candidate events which are going to come out based upon the data in your read model, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because event modeling is simply mapping out a decision-making criteria.
Well, yes and no. To me, to me, an event model is by example specification / blueprint / map once it's finished.
Yes.
And whether those things are addressed is really up to the information you want to capture in there. Sometimes, we've had people that want to use an event model to describe a legacy system or a product, the way it works, just to do analysis on it, or even to walk through legacy code with some documentation of what the heck is going on with that really ugly code. So, that's the nice part of it, is that there isn't such a strong opinion that this must be used for strategy, or this must be used for just as a blueprint, or it must be used just as a map of where to find things. We have the representation of state over time, and that's something to hang your hat off of. That's something real. That's better than a whole bunch of abstractions that don't really get tied to real information flowing in the system. And it just builds on that mindset that Fred Brooks mentioned so long ago. for those that don't know, that's the show me your tables and I'll understand everything that your system does, but show me your workflow charts and all that, and I'll continue to scratch my head. I don't know what you're doing. Like, that's a very powerful, profound thing out of the Mythical Man Month that gets overlooked because it's all about, you can't get 9 women to give birth to a baby in 1 month. That's the cheap, clickbait conclusion out of that book. The real insight is some of these things that he said about state.
So I'll point out that so we talked about levels of abstraction and how to articulate those, right? And and show the translation between those levels of abstraction, which really makes it practical. If we get a better pattern of that, like, that would help. The other thing that we're struggling with here, and in any intentional thing, let's just forget even worry about a strategic level decision. We've made a decision to make a change, right?
Mhm.
And how do we
Like this migration thing as an example,
yeah, this
right?
migration. I've decided to migrate from Rocket to Docker. Now, how do I articulate that intention to migrate and change my system from this way of working to that way of working? That's a second thing. And we could use that. Forget strategy. That's something we do every day. Hey, migrate to, like, maybe that's not even strategic. Maybe it's like desperation. Rocket's not working for us. We got to get to Docker.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah,
really
exactly.
matter.
You're right.
The why is second to, first of all.
No, Rick, that's an awesome point, because this is treating everything like every company has the luxury to just be strategic all the time. A lot of them are just like, holy crap, we're bleeding money here. Let's switch off of this thing.
No, I won't like.
Strategies dictated to them. How's that?
John's question is, so if I can articulate clearly that our intent is to make this implementation change from here to here, and as John pointed out, now the question is, how do we map that to Y, right? But those are two different things. I want to do this for this reason, right? But if I can't describe what I want to do, and I can't describe the pain, like if I can't describe those separately, I can't relate them. We don't have to try and conflate them. This doesn't tell me anything about why, really. It's not clearly laid out here. I think
you can do, I think you can label them. I don't think you can capture the why and how you phrase the events or what events are on here. I guess right now you can, well, maybe we can. Hold on a second. Maybe it is expensive. Let's pretend that cost.
So what I want to point.
Let me show you an example of how you can do it. Right?
Before you get
let me answer your question.
I think
before you get to that, let me point out one thing.
Okay.
Wordly maps are intention to explain the why of movement. Like, we want to move in this direction, not actually how we're going to accomplish that. That's not their goal. And I think your goal is more of, make that real to me. Show me this to this.
Yeah, because that's important. Because
no, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm saying they have two different purposes.
Okay, I'd argue with that, because I can do the other one.
Maybe you can add Y to yours, but the point is, right now I don't see clear articulation that most people will follow of we're moving from this to this.
Here's a clear articulation. Here's a clear articulation.
I was waiting for the colors to come out.
Here's a very clear articulation.
The other thing I'm thinking about, and I'm not going to be disruptive, is where we've picked a very, very technical example. When I'm working on a lot of projects at those sorts of levels, the discussions are often very broad. So like the conversation I dread is moving away from an internal warehouse to a warehouse vendor, right?
Right.
And the level of change involved in that goes way beyond technical to people, to process, organization,
that's right.
accounts, to obviously it's logistics, but and it's fun, right? But and how do you go from I appreciate that's probably way broader than this is ever intended to be.
No, but you can show it.
Yeah, and it's like there's an interesting, like, you know, if you're talking about zooming out, right? Well, now we need to zoom out beyond the technical to like
Well,
different paths, right?
Yeah.
the only thing I'd say, John, is I think this is a technical view of the business, though, because it's a business that is a software for developers business. I
Yeah,
think,
and
so Docker is an implementation detail, a warehouse is an implementation detail to a shipping business. I think they're both useful. Like, I think we're at the same view, same level of abstraction is what I'm trying to say. I just think it happens to be that we're using a company that develops tools around, like, on top of Docker, in the same way a shipping company, you know, processes packages and ships things through warehouses. But I'm speculating, but
no, I see the dance you're trying to make there, and I quite like it. You know, like
So, and I think you can see that there's a strategic Y of movement here. We've put some things on, right? Deployed to Docker, right? Or deployed to Rocket, deployed to Docker. That's great.
Because it's
and
a
then we have
commodity.
this
That's why
image
it's
migrated,
cheaper.
right?
See? Uh-huh.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, you got to deal with some with your icons because all the boxes are the same and all that kind of stuff, right? So you basically make a note. And then there's this migration, image migrated is something that is like part of that change.
Mhm.
Once that change is done, I don't do image migrated anymore. It doesn't become part of my business. This is how I do the change. So really, I think that's key here is what you've noticed is
Well,
I
that's
want to
a little
go from,
presumptive as well, because there's plenty of legacy code strategies that leave the old system as a black box running, and they only done on an as needed basis.
sure. And I think that's great. So maybe it's only as needed, maybe it's not. So whether I articulate that, how do I articulate that this becomes a new part of my system, or this is what I need to do to make that change. There's a difference.
Here, let me communicate that for you right now. That's how you do it. 2013, I expect to still deal with this, and I don't care, because it's a rounding error for my business.
You're saying we don't migrate images anymore after that?
No, we'll still migrate them on demand if that customer comes back for some reason.
Oh, I see. We're fine with this living on. Yeah, okay.
That's how you communicate it. Isn't that clearer than a Wordly map?
Well, tell me when deploy to Rocket dies.
I don't know. Maybe it never. Maybe we don't care.
I do care.
Well, it probably dies. It probably dies at the.
Let me say I'm paying a site
Hold on a
license.
second. Let me tell you when it dies.
You're looking into the crystal ball?
I'll tell you right now. No, it's because it's on our plan. It's when we take it offline. Change to only Docker. There, it's on your timeline. Happens right here. It's
So
this year.
yeah, and then basically we decommission Rocket.
Now, I'm not saying decommission. We just don't make new Rocket images.
Oh, so Rocket.
I said we're fine with this living on. Like, these old Rocket images will continue to live on. If someone 2 years down the road wants to instantiate that thing, it first says, oh, you're back 2 years. Give us 10 seconds here while we migrate you to our new platform. We'll come back and here's what we do now.
Right, okay,
That's a
so,
business decision, and that's what we're going to talk about in case, next year, 2021 to 2022, we have some of those things that are going to be concerns, or maybe the rounding errors.
so,
Maybe they're not worth even looking at. Maybe we just give
okay, so,
$100 Amazon gift cards to those people. Hey, welcome back. Here's a gift. Sorry about the inconvenience, blah, blah, blah. Easier than actually developing something to just give those 5 customers $100 each and call it a day.
so what I'm asking for then in that example is, when does the event deployed to Rocket no longer happen? This route change to Docker deploys is some
Route
implementation
change
detail.
to only Docker deploy is when it no longer gets deployed to Rocket. That's when it happens. If you want to have months
so
here,
I
and,
have to understand how that affects that thing. What I'm saying is, you said image migrated and said, we're fine with this event living on. Now show
Yeah.
me this event doesn't live on. Very clearly, very obviously, not with a side thing. Oh, if you know that little box means that box over there stays alive, then great. No, I mean, literally, show me the same thing. This event doesn't live on.
so the event deployed to Rocket is
Yeah.
end of life.
Yes, that's what I want to see. End of life, this event. That shows me the strategy. If you want to use that notation, you have to have symmetry.
Does that even make sense from an event sourcing perspective, though, right? Because the event still exists in the system; it can still flow through any, aggregates or whatever on reload, right? So the event isn't retired; it's just no longer part of the primary business function, right?
It no longer gets
It's not part of the business process model.
we won't get a new deploy to Rocket event because we're end of lifing
Yes,
doing that, right? That's
but-
what, right? So I want to end of life that event. That
This is
event.
not,
will
this is
no
not
longer
rocket
occur.
science. I mean, this is really just about painting what you want the reality to be like, attaching it to how your implementation is going to go. But you can talk at the strategic level using the same terminology, and I think you get way more value from something you can attach to realistic things, because the biggest problem with strategy is that a lot of people talk out of their ass and they're not ever held accountable to the assumptions they're making, ever.
Well, that's honestly because sometimes the implementation is obscured for them, so they're making uninformed decisions. So
Well,
there's two ways.
right,
there's
or
two sides to that.
is that right? Or I mean, are we just going to say that we shouldn't move on to better levels of understanding and continue for that to be an excuse for acting in a way that is not ideal anymore?
No, what I'm saying is there's two sides to you're giving one reason why they make bad decisions because they're talking out there. Often what they do is they bring in the most technical people and the technical people say, just do this. That'll give you what you want. So the business says, okay, we're just going to do this. Why? Well, because the technical people told us. So what we're doing is to try and make that shared why. Like, I think the point is make shared accountability on those decisions, right? And keep it alive. Why did we make that decision? Because we recommended this technically was the best choice forward, because the business says that's costing us too much money, or we said this is the best switch. Okay. So we work together to find what technical strategy to solve a business problem, and here's the reason why. And I think that's a better way of
Well,
articulating the purpose.
I would be happy to get this kind of, I think I would be really happy to get this kind of description of what we're going to do about all the bleeding and why our business is not viable and why my business is going to be viable next year. If truly this Docker versus Rocket is killing us, then I'd want to be able to see the work that I'm doing this year to impact that decision, and that I come in really energized on Monday mornings to work to get this across the finish line.
Yeah. So
not something, hey, we're doing this, guys, because it's a great idea and we had some Gartner research. that told us we should do that.
So
That's not good enough.
I'm wary of what we're looking at here degenerating to a different view. And I'm saying it's not that it's going to, just that it's something important to be aware of. Just a different view of the milestone markers that people put on a Gantt chart, right?
It's
You know what I
there's no difference between a Gantt chart and what you want to see as success, and that is a specification by example. And if we're implementing by the slice, we've capped the costs and guaranteed quality. So we've answered that with the Gantt chart problem. And yeah, if this takes over from Gantt charts, if someone wants to use Gantt charts, use an event model. It's way better because you get to slice it up into potentially fixed cost projects, and you can go back to your functional decomposition from back in 2000 or whatever, but at least have something for information completeness and a small design up front to actually, to hold yourself to those estimates for once. So why the hell not? What's so bad about Gantt charts if they actually work? The problem is Gantt charts didn't work because it was assuming the cost curve was flat, and it wasn't, clearly, with no design.
Well, okay, that's a long, drawn out circular conversation that I don't really want to get.
Well, save it for Friday. We're gonna do one. Rick, I'm sure you didn't join last Friday, but we had, like, after the workshop, a fun kind of event. So
Yeah,
we
I
can play
couldn't make
some
it.
games and have some beers and discuss, have some fun arguments about that. And it would be really cool to do that. But I think we're out of time today. I really thank everyone for sticking it out. Most of you made it all the way to the end. Let me know more ideas. Rick, thank you as always for challenging and making sure that I explain things thoroughly. And I think this is a really good chapter to add and to continue to evolve this community. We're almost at 1,000 people in the Slack channel, so it's coming along great. Lots of people are doing that. That King's Corner game that I forget the fellow's name. Is it Nick Tull? I think is his name. Anyway, he's
Jeff Tuller.
Sorry?
Jeff Tuller, I think.
Yes, Jeff. Right. Yes. Holy smokes! Okay, I know what to do. Just event modeled his whole game as like developing. Like that's the nicest feeling for me, is because we've been experiencing that ourselves in our company, where we can literally go from a design thing in an afternoon on a Monday and come in on a Wednesday with the whole damn thing working, and people are going, "How did you do that?" And it captures everything we wanted. And that feeling is the best feeling, and why I love software. And it was always being stolen by the management and the band-aids on bad things, right? So this makes everything explicit, but with tools like ONote, they'll be collapsible, be able to have that. But what a great feeling to collaborate with everyone, top to bottom, CEO down to support, everything. It's just, it's really wonderful. So anyway, I'm excited. I can't wait to bring this to a lot of clients and teach them how to not get lost in the detail, but have anchors in reality, and not require town hall meetings to explain what the hell's going on. It's just everyone knows what's going on all the time. There's no need for a town hall meeting. We know what we're doing. We know why we're doing it.
I was just going to say, Adam, do you want to start up a separate channel on the Slack so we can all argue about this stuff?
Yeah, sure. I think you can
Slack?
just create one and invite me.
Well, what do we want to call? What would you call it then?
I think we could say
modeling?
challenges. You can say critiques or challenges, right? Critiques. I mean, we need to own up. If we're doing this, we really need to be bulletproof to all the other approaches. And I have a ton of battle scars for the last 5 years of doing this, and getting challenges and getting booted out because it rubs some people the wrong way, and they studied their Scrum Master certificates and all, have their Scrum Master certified people that now they won't have a job, and all these things that are, you learn how to go in tactfully and show that these things map to what they're used to. You don't just change things overnight. All those things are learning processes, but at the same time, you can never stop the push in the right direction and change the industry for the better. I think we all need to make a better world. I see a lot of benefits that you get from doing things this way, so I'll continue to support it and evolve it and and grow the practice with people. So there's more and more, people experienced in it that can help one another out. It's not just me. And so I don't know if I don't see what I'm doing as being bad. I'm really seeing it as lightening the tool, making your tool belt lighter, right? Why would you have 5 different tools in your tool belt where, one would do the job of 5, right? You can run a lot faster with that single tool belt in there. And if we can start to answer a lot of the questions and meet the goals of some of the other practices out there with this one practice, then we've done everyone a favor, because that's one less thing to have to buy from, Jira or whatever. We can list a whole bunch of things. And it's this funny little cartoon that I showed, I think, on Twitter. I'm not sure who saw this, right? But it's like, is that all you need? And you have all this stuff that a typical startup would say, well, let's do our company as a startup. What do we need? Need this, that, another, and iteration 0. And what other practices do people need, right? I don't want people to have to bring on board all of these things just to have a system they want to automate and reach their goals. If I can give them something simpler to achieve the same goals, well, why not? I think it's a really good thing. I'm biased, but I think it's a really good thing. Maybe it's not a good thing for the manufacturers of those products. They're probably not going to be happy that people aren't buying their stuff anymore, but people don't buy horse-drawn carriages anymore and buggies, right? So we buy cars these days. Things move on. And so likewise, we got to move on in the industry. We've been beating the agile dead horse with Scrum for how many years and haven't found anything better. So let's find better things. Keep moving on. So anyway, with that tirade, thank you, Rick, and everyone. It's we're way over time, and I got to get going with all the things I need to do today. So thank you very much. Let's meet up on the Slack, and I'd love to see a criticisms.
It's called critiques. It's now
sure. Okay, critique. Excellent.
now on there.
So,
and I tried
this
to
is where
invite
we
everyone
can
on
argue.
here. Yeah,
So,
a few people I couldn't
I'm gonna
find.
answer your question in critiques. Here it is, right?
yeah.
When is event modeling not appropriate?
Um,
You have to answer it
you know
now.
when it's not appropriate? It's
Yeah,
really to
think
do
about
with
it.
humans. It's when you have dynamics in an organization that don't allow other tools to not be used. So they have to use user stories or planning poker or
okay,
Jira.
yeah. Good answer.
That's
Not
an
the question
answer.
I was trying to ask. That's a good answer to a very different question. Right?
Okay, so when is it not appropriate?
So, like, assuming we don't have some massive dysfunction and we can't change the way people are working, right? Because to be honest, that picture is sadly appropriate to 99% of teams, right?
Yeah.
Probably, right? It's quite nice when you realize that. I mean, even event modeling might be a thing, but it's quite nice when you suddenly realize that shit, we don't need anything. We can invent it as we go. Let's find something that works. But like, if you have a malleable team that isn't resisting change, right? What kind of projects, what kind of maybe life cycles isn't event modeling?
I would say that a highly exploratory one, where you're really in that genesis part, that you kind of want to leave it as a black box and see what happens, the experimental phase. I think if you have a highly technical product where you're developing a new encryption algorithm, maybe a domain where the work is really done in research and finding documentation on stuff. I think to contrast that, what is the ideal one? Something like inventory management, point of sale, warehousing, financial stuff like trading, banking. You'd be stupid not to do event modeling in those domains, because it's built on traceability and accountability, and that's the opposite side. I hope that makes sense, at least from my sort of
So are you saying kind of like when the desired business process is known?
More better known. How's that? Better known, or you're dealing with state transitions. I think state transitions is kind of a good way to look at it as well. I know that can encompass almost everything, but if you look at a ledger of changes, and you can equate that to state changes. That actually addresses 95% of the problem spaces out there. So I think that's where it's applicable. Yeah, the odd one that's not, highly technical domain, you're actually working on infrastructure code. I don't think it'll be as useful to you. But all companies have a level of information management that is custom. And I think if you're not using it because your main domain, like your main problem space, it doesn't hurt to have it in the other ones that you still just need to not have run away from you and become a pain in the neck when it can be, estimated and implemented if you have the event model. So you certainly don't want those side domains and supporting domains to distract you from your main domain. Let's say it's encryption, like that's what you're doing, but then you have to, do some stuff with user accounts and more mundane things. Well, the value for using an event model with those mundane supporting domains is that those will not throw you a curveball and distract you from your core one, even though you're not using event modeling in your core one. It puts a cap on the costs of those supporting domains, or at least makes them, predictable. If you're going to have some, flux there of requirements, you at least are going in with your, well aware of what the costs are going to be to your organization. So, I think I don't know if I'm articulating the best way, but these really easy state transitions, which most systems are out there when you're automating banks and insurance companies, and like I said before, those are the traditional things. That's where 99% of the programmers out there automating systems are working in. There's a select few that are working on very interesting problems, writing the next framework so we don't have React, writing the next algorithm for trading, or writing the next, well, even there it's probably good to have event modeling, but anyway, writing the next encryption algorithm. Those places probably not. They're probably gonna have something to do with actual computer science rather than information systems.
Yeah, no, I think we largely agree on that. I mean, I've got to the place where stuff for heavy algorithm, it hasn't worked very well, but even really early startup, I've had great success because it allows you to quickly map out what you think the business process might look like.
Right.
This happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. And someone can very quickly draw a picture around a bit of it and say, cool, let's blow that up then.
Yep.
And you can see if it works quickly. But yeah, I think I've come to the same heavy algorithm.
I wouldn't do it for everything, but I certainly, when I'm doing some event sourced stuff or just like a fun project, even that silly template, the HTML template example, it still was good to make an event model because I could gather my thoughts about where the recursion was and, walk myself through the large cognitive load that you get into and why you need to debug and all this like nasty stuff, right? So it's a real good companion for debugging information systems where you kind of start to build up you're starting to add too many watch windows for variables as you go through some legacy code. That's where I find it's useful as well. So we'll see. It's a little bit more too close to the implementation, but it's helpful. I would generally always start from the business focus, and that's the real number one benefit of it, I think, or where it's most valuable. So anyway, all right, we're really over time now, but I appreciate the question. And we'll continue on with the critiques. Love to continue the discussion, and then look out for Friday. We're going to have an extra long session because we're going to do a second half invite for the workshop attendees to have another kind of a games night, kind of a fun Friday. I'm really needing these fun Fridays. I've just been so overworked lately. So I hope to see you there this Friday. Should be fun. And we can continue some discussions and play some games and just have a good time. So thanks again, everyone. We'll see you hopefully this Friday. And if not, next Tuesday or whenever the next ones are. So thank you so much. See you next time. Bye.